You're living a great life now, and you want to live an even greater life. I'm Wyne, the Rabbi of Young Israel, Aish of Las Vegas. Welcome to the Life is Great community. And one of the great secrets, and I say secret only because we ignore this obvious fact, is if we know what our pleasures are and have the ability to focus on them more often, we live better lives. Is it obvious? It's obvious. As the great Makubal, a Kabbalist from the 1700s, the Ramchal explained, the most important concepts in life are the most obvious, and because they're so obvious, they are overlooked. And this is one of the most important concepts in life. Know what your pleasures are. So let's take a few minutes today and help rediscover what our pleasures are so that we have the ability to focus on them. Now, in a certain sense, it sounds so obvious and simple. Well, I know what I like to do. I like coffee in the morning. I like ice cream in the afternoon. I like nice people. I like to make some money. I like to have some influence. Okay, we kind of have this vague idea about what they are, but please never, ever, ever underestimate how much work a person will do in order not to think. It is an amazing quality, a human quality, that it's in each and every one of us, that we will work so hard in order not to think, in order not to pay attention, and then we suffer the consequences from it. It's so much easier to have other people kind of just tell us, like, kind of what we should think about, which is, by the way, I mean, not to get into the modern commentary of the news, that's what news has become. There used to be a day when you were like watching the news and you were being told, okay, this is what happened, without opinion. Today, it's all opinions. How did it get that way? Because we live in a society that it's way easier for us to just be there and then have people constantly feed our confirmation bias. This is kind of how I think. And then have other people say, this is how you should really think. And this way, it's like really easier. But that's not the Jewish way. The Jewish way is use whatever you have in between your ears. Use whatever noodles you got. Concentrate, focus on your pleasures. So I want to share that as a preface to understanding what exactly our pleasures are and how to access them, is that with every true pleasure in life, there's a counterfeit pleasure. And again, God created us to experience pleasure. We know that because that's really what we do. We are always searching to acquire more pleasures in whatever avenue I'm in. The problem is the great counterfeit. A counterfeit means I think I'm getting pleasure, but it's not really a pleasure. The greatest counterfeit of our society is that the opposite of pain is pleasure. The opposite of pain is not pleasure. The opposite of pain is no pain, is comfort. A person must exert effort in order to acquire pleasure. At least the effort to think, to concentrate, to focus on what they are experiencing. At least that amount, but it might be even more than that. Every pleasure there is, a person can get lost in a bag of potato chips. If you go to a movie and you get a small popcorn, is probably all you want, but they suck you into getting like the unlimited large popcorn, and then you eat all that popcorn, you feel lousy afterwards, right? A person wants the pleasure of love, but is seduced by the element of sex, in which case they get involved in and they realize, well, I don't really love this person. I'm just involved with this person. And they have to learn how to somehow pull out. A person picks a cause. They really think they're doing the right thing, right? And they're engaged in it and they're pushing for it. And then they realize after years, they go, well, that was a bunch of fruitless energy. Like I really didn't make anyone better, or no one's lives are really impacted in a proper way compared to how much effort and resource I put towards that. So a person has to stop and be very clear of the counterfeit. Understand that sometimes, there's something that appears like a pleasure, but really it's not such a pleasure. So generally, as a general rule, with exceptions, these will be rooted to the confusion that the opposite of pain is pleasure. And people are searching for comfort, searching for the easy way out. Generally, the easier way out is not the pleasurable way. Talmud says, according to the effort is the reward. If you put in the effort, you will get the reward. Before I go through all the pleasures, one quick story. I was one time speaking in front of a group of people, and a guy comes up to me and says, Rabbi, your book changed my life. I said, oh, how wonderful. I'll write this book. Life is great. Okay. Anyway, can you tell me what was the point that you really, that was so impactful for you? He said, you were telling a story, a side story, and you advised that people should never eat. They should never watch TV when they eat. And I said, wow. And your whole point was, if you're sitting there eating and watching TV, you miss the pleasures of the food you're eating. And he goes, and I realized when I read that every day, I had breakfast, I made breakfast, turned the TV on, and I watched, and my family would watch the TV was running while we would eat breakfast. And I didn't realize that I was missing out on the pleasure of drinking the coffee, eating the eggs, even sitting with my children, even watching how they sometimes fight and argue. And when I turned the TV off and I realized I could focus more on the pleasures that I already was experiencing, it was transformative for my whole life. That is a basic element. You have to learn to just be aware. They call it mindfulness, but just be aware of what's going on in your life. Don't go on autopilot. So often a person goes for a walk and they say, well, if I got to go for a walk for my health, what I'll do is I'll listen to a podcast and I'll be learning stuff while I do it. That's true. That sometimes is a valuable use of time, but sometimes it's better just to turn the podcast off and just focus on the one thing you're doing. A friend of mine runs marathons, and I said to him, so what do you listen to when you run the marathon? He goes, nothing. I listen to myself breathe. I listen to the other people around me, so it's an interesting approach, right? That's how he did it. So he got the most out of it. My brother has been on a ski patrol in Whistler Blackcomb for 30 years. From his advice, he turned to me and said, don't listen to music when you ski. And I stopped listening to music when I ski. The reason is because skiing is inherently dangerous. There's a lot of things that are going on around, right? Then I spoke with a fellow. I one time saw a guy who was skiing, and he was beautiful, like a beautiful skier. And I said to him, give me a tip. What do you do to get in that rhythm? He goes, do you listen to music when you ski? I go, never. He says, start doing it. It's like dancing. It gives you the rhythm. So you see, there's a plus and a minus to everything, right? You have to find your way. So I'm going to give you general principles here, and then you've got to learn to plug it in for your particular situation. Again, as my Rabbi always said, everybody has two eyes, a nose, 2 ears, and a mouth, but we all look different. So there's universals, and then there's a way where you got to take the principles and plug it into yourself. What does that require? You got to use your mind. You got to think for yourself on this and say, okay, I got the principle, but I realize that the application of every principle is very, very unique and very individual. And that's why we're not all the same. Okay. So let's start. Again, the background is created for pleasure. You want pleasure. Your life's going to be great if you're able to access the pleasures. So we say that there are 5 classes of pleasure. Now, this is written down in a book in the 1200s called the Sefer HaChinuch, the Book of Education. And what he did in the 1200s, what the author did in the 1200s, was he went through all the commandments and told us what the commandment is, why it's so important, a reason behind the commandments, and how to apply it. So what I'm going to share with you is actually out of this book, the Sefer HaChinuch. So it's written a long time ago. It's principles that we say were given to us by God at Mount Sinai. And he wrote this as he was explaining the mitzvah of love of God. Every moment you can connect with the Almighty, you are doing a commandment. You're fulfilling a mitzvah, fulfilling a commandment, one of God's commandments. And it's something we can do at every moment of our lives. So he explained like this, that people are constantly striving to get pleasure in their lives. The easiest, most available pleasure you can have is physical pleasure. That's any pleasure you experience through your five senses: your sight, your smell, your taste, your hearing, or your touch. Any physical pleasure, any physical sensation you're getting, you can experience this pleasure. It's available at all the time, and it is very inexpensive, because at every moment you can look out and see the beautiful, the beautiful trees, feel the wind on your face. You can hear music, you can listen, you smell the smells. I mean, all these are great pleasures. Enjoy the ice cream, enjoy the coffee, enjoy the steak, enjoy the honey. One of the problems with physical pleasures is because it's so available and it's so intense, you might get stuck there, but it's just like the lowest class of pleasure. As a matter of fact, you'll give up a lot of physical pleasures just to get the higher level of pleasure. And no matter what you do, a little bit of the higher level of pleasure, that will override the physical pleasures. What's higher than physical? Love. Spiritual pleasures. Love is a pleasure that we experience when we identify and appreciate the virtues in another. When you look at another person and you say, wow, they're really special. It's like, that's what you're going for. Love is in every song, almost every song on the radio, every television series, every movie. It's the discussion. It's a heartache is like, always speaking about it, because money can't buy you love, right? It can get you other things, but it's not buying you love. Love it's more expensive in the respect that it costs more effort to get love, because you actually have to appreciate another. You got to focus on another. And of course, the highest love a person can feel, we say, is the love of children. The love of your children is so much greater. You can look at your children. They say love's blind. No, love is not blind. Love is a magnifying glass. Nobody loves me like my mother. Nobody knows my faults like my mother. Okay? And she sees it all, right? We see love is a magnifying glass, because you're seeing the virtues, you're appreciating the virtues, you're connecting with them. It should be that we love our spouses more than we love our children. But in almost every case, that's not the case. The reason for that, by the way, is because you give so much more to your children than you give to your spouse, right? Intuitively, God gives us a head start with our children. Kid comes out, all he does is poop and cry until you take care of him, but he's the cutest thing in the world, right? So intuitively, God gives us a head start on our souls over loving our children. But then you give so much to your kids. You got to love them, because the more you give to someone, the more you love them, right? The more you give of yourself to someone, the more of yourself and self-love is going to override everything else. The more you see yourself in that child, so therefore you love them more. If you gave that much to your spouse, you'd love your spouse as much as well. All right? Very few people divorce their children. A lot of people divorce their spouses. Okay? They're ready to change that in, right? But it's weird, because in the entire world, you chose of 4 billion people in the world, you chose that one person to be your spouse, right? So you'd think, well, that should be the one, right? So give more to your spouse. Focus on the pleasure that you can give to your spouse. Focus on what's special about your spouse more. You'll love your spouse more. But that's only fourth class pleasure, right? It's physical pleasure, and you experience physical pleasure, and then you can experience love. It's a rocket ship. You got to go every stage, up and up and up and up. Higher than love is remarkable. It's something that we identify that people will literally leave their families in order to achieve, and that is meaning, doing the right thing. People will go to war. They will spend endless hours away at work, travel away, leave their families in order to accomplish something bigger, something greater, right? Doing the right thing, having a cause. If you wake up in the morning, you don't know what to get up for, and you just don't know what you're doing, you know what? That means you're not living with class number 3. Pleasure number 3 is that which gets us out of bed. It makes us accomplish things, gives us meaning, it gives us purpose. It's that which really helps us accomplish, but it's something which we have a passion for. Now, sometimes people turn their family into their meaning. That is very, very often where my family becomes my meaning. Taking care of my family is my meaning. And therefore, that's why I'm going to work. And that's why I'm accomplishing things for my family. That's okay. That's okay. That's a source of meaning. No, there's no problem with that. But this is something, it means like I have to do the right thing. A person would rather take a bullet to the head than kill 1,000 innocent children. Why is that? Because doing the right thing is more important than just pretty much almost anything, right? Well, why not just do the wrong thing? Kill the kid. Why not? Well, I can't kill a kid. It's murder. What are you talking about? Because we have to look at ourselves in the mirror in the morning, and we have to have self-respect. Our ability to choose what's right, to do the right thing, to be good, our ability to look at ourselves and say, I am a good person, I have self-respect, that even overrides love. That will override love of my children. That'll override. People will, suffer as they go away, physically suffer. My uncle used to sleep in his office the first 8 years of his, as he was learning to be a life insurance salesman, first 8, maybe 5 years, he literally slept in his office and took showers in the gym and just collected all his money and his contacts. Then worked, 20 hours a day to build his business. Okay, so the last 40 years of his life, he was financially fine, but to get that going, my family has a long history of that, actually. People, just working really, really, really hard when you're young and then enjoying your life later. Like, not later, enjoying your life middle to later, right? But putting in the effort, putting in the time in order to build yourself. That's having a cause, right? Of course, we say one of the greatest causes is the cause of the Jewish people. It's meaningful because we are the people that, we literally civilize humanity. We bring meaning to the world. We bring goodness to the world. There's very few causes that are a higher cause than that. So when we, you work to build the Jewish community, you work to make money, and you give charity to build the community, that is a very powerful thing. Incredibly powerful thing. It's an elevating thing. So helping Israel civilize the world, bring positive, good Jewish values to make people's lives better. So you look around and you say, wow, I have affected thousands of people in a good way. That is extremely meaningful. Yeah, a person, when they die peacefully, when they look back at their life, and they say, wow, I brought so much good in the world. That's huge. But there is something even greater than that. And that is learned by the counterfeit. Again, the counterfeit is easier. It's always easier to, it's easy to just eat too much ice cream. It's easy to just go after infatuation rather than love. It's easier to go after a lousy cause than a proper cause. Right? It's easier to think, I not really think it through. I'm doing the right thing. And then in the process do the wrong thing or not really have a cause. My cause is the Golden Knights. Yeah. Okay. You know what? If that's your cause, you got a problem. You're not going to die with a smile on your face. Guaranteed. Unless you are like the owner of the Golden Knights or the general manager and you're going to say, I bring so much goodness and happiness to people. But if you're just the fan dropping $200 a game, crying when they lose to the Edmonton Oilers, if that's who you are, we need to have a talk. Okay. Anyway, what's higher than doing the right thing? You learn it from the counterfeit. The opposite of this particular pleasure is destroying the world. Hitler, Stalin, Hamas, these pro-Palestinian people, they bring so much, with joy on their lips, they bring destruction to the world. Way easier to destroy things than it is to build things. You got it. It is the ability to create, the godlike ability to create the world, to make the world better. That is even higher than doing the right thing. Doing the right thing is like a stepping stone. Once I'm attuned to what is good and what's not good, and to helping people, then I go even higher and I say, now I'm really involved in creating things. I'm creating the world. Raising good children is part of this. When you raise children, you have a family, that's love. That's when I'm just appreciating how cute my kids are, right? When I'm actually helping my children grow, okay, that's the right thing, and I'm investing in them. And then when they're building their own homes and they're building the world, that's like, look what I made. You build the community. So you made it. That's why the people who involve themselves in community building are like, really, they got something over the rest of the people. They do. They do. Artists, a novelist, a musician, people who are creative. They walk around with their nose in the air a little bit. They know they got something over on the rest of us, because they do. Because they're involved in being creative on that level, a higher level. And the highest level of pleasure in this world is love of God. That's what he says in Sefer Chinuch. It's loving the Almighty. It's recognizing, actually, what does it mean to love God? You have to appreciate God's virtues. Well, who is God? Okay, he's great. He's almighty. He's giving. He's powerful. He's all-knowing. It means when you're appreciating God's virtues, it means that every pleasure I'm experiencing, whether it's a good steak, whether it's loving of a spouse or children, whether it's the self-respect I have by the pleasure of doing the right thing and having a cause, motivation to wake up in the morning, whether it's that I see I'm involved in creating something that's making the world better, recognize that every one of those feelings is from the Almighty, and it's a gift from the Almighty. And it's God who's allowing me to make the decision, to put forth the effort to be engaged in that. All of that is so powerful. That's love of God. It's the highest pleasure. It's the most expensive pleasure because it requires a lot of effort. It requires thinking. It requires connecting in a very, 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 very intimate way with the creator of the universe. But those are your pleasures. Now, what you've got to do is you got to take your individual connection, your individual, everything that God has given you, your abilities, your talents, your life situation. And then you've got, and your preferences, and you've got to plug them in to all five of those things. Say, how does this fit well with me? Okay, no, the rabbi's greatest pleasure is connecting, building the community, building the Jewish people, seeing how much we civilize the world and how much goodness we bring to people's lives through the Torah and through Judaism. Okay, but is that your pleasure? Why isn't it your pleasure? Maybe there's an element of that works for you, but everyone, you got to find your place in this paradigm. And when you do that, you'll know what your pleasures are. You'll wake up in the morning. Boy, a smile on that face is going to come very, very fast. You'll wake up with a smile, and you will accomplish in your life. You will accomplish until you can't accomplish anymore because you're so tired, and then you need a break, and you need a rest. And you'll rest, and then you'll wake up again with a fire in your belly, and every day will be a joy. All right? So here we go. I want to bring in our producer, the fabulous Dana Rutherford, to share with us some questions from you, those who listen to Life is Great.
Thanks, Rabbi Wyne. Hi, everyone.
Hello, Dana.
All right, so we have two really good questions today. And the first says, my niece was so inspired when she was young. She'd worked hard to become a real estate agent, but somewhere in her mid-20s, she just sort of checked out of inspiration. I spoke with her about it recently, and she told me that she doesn't know, but she wants to fix her life, and she wants to feel strongly about living again in a way that's inspiring. Where should she start?
Love it. No, the first piece of wisdom for your niece, is why motivates. The why is what motivates us. We have to know why we're doing something. So she probably started in real estate because had the opportunity. Someone told her to make a living. She could make a living, but she didn't know what that was all about. Years ago, I had a guy who was like, I got a master's degree, good looking guy, 27 years old, had a job, making money, comes, sits down on this couch right here, starts bawling his eyes out saying, my parents told me I had to get an education. I graduated from school. It said, you got to get an education. I didn't know what I was doing. Go back to school, get a master's. Oh, you got to get a job. You got to make money. They never told me why. They never gave me a higher purpose. There are people every day, they're involved in real estate. They know that's how they make their money, but their meaning is they're raising a family. Their meaning is they're building a community. Their meaning is they're helping people's lives. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with finding your meaning in your work too. You'd say, oh, I make people's lives so much better because, they need a place to live. They need a place to have their business, whatever. I help the people I support. I've been contributing part of 10,000 people getting jobs because I was in commercial real estate and I rented out a big building. I mean, there are elements of meaning to that. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's what she needs to do. Start with why? What's important in my life? Start off with, if I was going to die tomorrow, what do I want to accomplish? What would make it all worthwhile? Get the why, and then she'll have the strategy, and that'll give her the fire.
That's excellent. Thank you. So then the second question says, how does procrastination factor into missing out on your pleasures? How can you stop the habit and live with more alacrity?
Beautiful question. The procrastination is the enemy of accomplishments. It is, as my Rabbi said, it is suicide on the installment plan. Right? That's what it is. When a person is procrastinating, they have to know that is their Yitz, their evil inclination. That is their lower self rising above their soul and putting their soul down and not allowing them to go forward. So sometimes what you do is, the way to deal with it is have one of the lower easy pleasures, coffee, ice cream, whatever it is, whatever your lower pleasure is, right? And then as a bribe the body to do the soul's work. So you bribe the body, have a lower pleasure, and then you push forward with getting to do what's important, what you need to do. Okay. All right. So thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Thanks for listening to the Life is Great podcast and the videos. You can forward these to all your friends. Make sure you subscribe. Send in your questions to rabbiyitzwyne at gmail.com, RABBIYITZ at gmail.com. And thanks for being part of the Life is Great community.